So here's Tele-vision in Vegas, and this has a lot of tracks. If we scroll down here and look along the left, there's 39 tracks. So the bottom two are audio. This is the play-along version without leads. It's not really needed in this project, but there's the one audio track and 37 video tracks. Because the order of tracks in Vegas determines what things are in front, I typically have the titles and text objects in the front and then the clips here. The first thing is what I call the transporter, and it was kind of inspired by Star Trek when people would be beamed in. This is the lead guitar character, his first entrance, the guy in the jacket. And this is actually several things. There's the purple column that comes down, and it has a little wiggle to it. And there's also this kind of snowy thing in the middle, which is the noise plug-in, a noise generator. And that expands and opens wider. And then I'll find a place where he's just partway down. This actually is the checkerboard, made up of red and blue, but not checkerboard, but just columns. And these are all the parameters, and these are the two colors picked, the red and the blue. And this is, I use track motion here to have it come down. Track motion, unlike the pan and crop that kind of works in reverse, this works normal. So here he starts at the top, and then over time that thing descends, and that's the blue and red column coming down. Then there's the snow portion, and that also has some automation. And I have just a narrow column here. I'll zoom in. There's just a narrow little strip, and it widens as I come towards this point. And again, you only define the start and end points. It starts here, and over that half a second or so, it opens up and gets wider, and that's the noise. And here we're seeing it at the full width. And the last thing is a combination of more noise and the player. And the idea was to have them kind of materialize from thin air. And that also was done with a parent-child. But the noise controls how much of this leaks through, just like in a rondo where I had a circle and I stretched it to be an oval. And that controlled how much of the pencil rattling between the strings shows through. In this case, the noise controls how much of the player shows through. The player also fades in. You can see here's the fade in part right around here, and you can control how long it fades in over. This is actually a static clip with the velocity or speed, the playback speed set to 0. So what I meant to do was to stand still as I was waiting to start playing and then become more animated, and I forgot to do that. So I just grabbed literally a single frame and froze it, and then it becomes the animated person over here. That's Beam Me Up, Scotty. There's a slide guitar overlay. And again, that's one of those. It's not full brightness. You can see my jacket through this overlay, but notice how it's a little fuzzy here. There are blur plugins. There's one called Gaussian Blur that will blur an image, and I use that various times. But I didn't want to blur the detail. I just wanted to blur the edge so it wasn't such a sharp line. And I couldn't find a plugin that did that. But what I ended up discovering that was actually worked out very cool is the chroma key plug, which is normally meant for the green screen, which I'm using anyway. And if you do the blur, it just blurs the edges. So in this case, it gave a nice a blurred effect just to the box that surrounds the player. I should also mention, this is a fabulous slide. I got this slide from Jeff Roberts, who owns Latch Lake Music, latchlakemusic.com, and he actually gave me that. He's a friend of mine, and that's a fabulous slide and really worth mentioning because it's better than the thin bottles and glass bottles and thin metal. It's very, very heavy, almost like a steel guitar slide. Really has a lot of sustain, and that's very important for slide guitar, especially the kind of playing I did here where a single note might have to hold for 5 seconds as I slide around up and down. Let's see, next interesting section here is the cowboy, which was done with 2 cameras. We used 2 cameras several times in this piece. Here's the main character, and this is a close-up. And this was not done by blowing that up because it would be grainy and pretty low quality, even though it's only half bright. And again, here you can see the edges are softened up with the chroma key blur. So this is actually 2 cameras because I wanted it to be perfectly in sync. I didn't want to play it twice and hope that I moved my fingers exactly the same. So that was done with 2 cameras, and there are other places that are done with that. There's a close-up in the cello and piano section where I'm playing the piano, and there's a close-up, and that also was done with the second camera simultaneously. In the guitar quartet section, there's a bass player, and he spins around, and it turns into the guitar player in the middle. That was done with two different techniques at the same time. They're cross-fading, and you can see that one track fades out just as the other one fades in, but there's also track motion on both of these. So one spins as he comes in, and the other one spins as he comes out. And these are markers, and obviously these identify all the sections. And one thing that's really nice, when you have markers in a project, when you export the project and render it to the final video, there's a checkbox here to save the markers in the media file. If you do that, DVD Architect will automatically make chapter markers there, so you can use the Next and Previous button on your DVD player's remote control, and the chapters are already marked. And even though it doesn't say that anywhere in the DVD menus, you can try that, and you'll see that you can go from section to section. One interesting thing I did was at one point there's a bird that flies overhead. And I actually used two things. I used track motion to move the bird across the screen. It's just a static photo, but it looks like he's changing the angle. And I did that by sizing the image in the pan and crop. And there are options here for lock the aspect ratio. And if I lock the aspect ratio, then as I changed it, the bird would just get bigger or smaller. By keeping those independent, I was able to move the bird and change its, and you can see how it's changing its size and its shape as well as its size. So that's what makes it look like it levels out and then goes uphill again and goes upward, and this is what happens over time. And this is independent of the track motion, which is what actually moves it across the screen and gives it that shadow effect. There's a little shadow under Bear, there's a little shadow under my feet, under the piano, and I have that pretty much everywhere in every track. But in this case, I moved the shadow and made it distant, so it looks sort of like it's on the ground, even though all this is happening up in the sky. And that's done also with the track motion. And here you'll look at this whole track motion section. There's a position, which is where you place things, and there's 2D, two-dimensional shadow, and there's also a glow. And I'm not using the glow here, but glow is definitely used in other tracks and other players. I should mention, during the screen capture process, some of the double-clicking doesn't seem to work. Normally, I would just double-click this, and the track motion would come up right at that point in time. And that's not working, so I'm having to come over here and hit the track motion button, but it always comes up at the beginning of the track, which isn't really what I want. I want to just double-click this and have the cursor right at the right point. But this is at 3 minutes and 48 seconds here. So we'll bring the track motion up, zoom out, come over to that part, and here's where the shadows are defined. And this is a very far shadow, and this is how far the size of the shadow, the offset, X and Y, X is horizontal, Y is vertical. So in this case, it's to the right some amount, and it's below a negative number. And you can see it's a fairly large offset. You can also just grab this, and that changes the numbers over here. You can change the numbers here, and that changes that. So that's how I got a very distant shadow that looks like it's far away. And I have presets for a lot of this. I have, for the regular players, I have shadow and no shadow. I also use temp a lot. When there's 8 violin players on the screen, I'm going to do the same kind of thing to all 8 of them. I'll figure out what it is, and then I'll save that as a preset. Okay, this is how much shadow I want for here. And I have presets, and I just always call them temp, because I don't need it as permanently. I don't want to wade through 75 presets. This is what I'm working on right now for the next 20 minutes. And then I can just call that up and go to the next track and call up that preset. So that is a very efficient way to work. You can also see remnants of the rainbow here, and I did this with a couple of tracks. Here there's some orange and yellow, but the rainbow, of course, also has blue, so I had to create 2 of them. This is just a parentheses. This is just an ASCII text, very primitive, but it works well, and I added what they call as Gaussian blur, and that just blurs everything. And you can even blur the different colors and the intensity, brightness separately. And there's a bunch of presets, and it looks sort of like a rainbow. I spent a huge amount of time on Blinky's eyes, and Blinky is the Simpsons character. And if you're a Simpsons fan, you know that episode where they discover the 3-eyed fish in the radioactive river. And this was a picture I also got off, I forget where. I've had this for a long time. I have a lot of Simpsons pictures. I should be embarrassed to admit it, but I'm not. And in order to figure out how to do this, I actually had to go to find that episode in The Simpsons that had that episode when Blinky first made his appearance, and look to see how did they animate the eyes. And I'm going to make this as wide as I can right here, so I don't have to keep showing the preview window. And these are individual frames. I spent a half an hour or an hour taking this, and then I made a version where the eyes were just barely closing in that color. Then they're closed a little bit more, and a little bit more, and then almost completely closed. And then it opens completely, and then it goes on to the next eye and closes a little. And notice I just have a little bit of shading here. Even though this is very quick and small, this is much smaller than in the actual Simpsons episode, but I wanted to be at least as true as I could to that, and then goes to do the same thing with the third eye. And that the whole thing took me, like, as I recall, about 3 hours to do all that, to capture the picture and edit the picture and strip them all in. And then it goes back to the solid picture for a second and a half, 2 seconds, something like that. But at the funk section here, let's find where that starts here. The band, as you know, drops into place from the ceiling or above the ceiling as the classical guitar is fading out, and all these players drop down perfectly in sync and in position with the guys in the front and the guys in the back and the guys behind that. That was all done with track motion. I'll just show you one of the tracks, and here's the rhythm guitar player. There's 2 rhythm guitar players. This is the guy on the left. So I started actually at this point. I said, okay, a quarter second, whatever, before the band actually starts playing. Because every single one has a point here and a point right at the beginning of the clip, a motion point. And this is the final position right there. Everybody is in position. And here's the same thing up at the top. And I just did this manually. If you click on this thing and hit the down arrow key, or up and down arrow keys, you can move it in tiny, tiny increments. So I just adjusted that until the bottom of that guitar player, the bottom of his feet, was just barely visible, just off the top of the screen. And that's right at the very beginning of the clip. So when the clip first starts, and then it comes over time, and he drops down. And I just used markers and set the exact same point for each of the tracks. I also spent an awful lot of time, more time than I probably should have, on animating the disco floor, and that was really quite a project. The floor itself is a checkerboard, and there's a backdrop, which is just a solid, very dark red that's happening back here. And doesn't come, it only comes down this far, and I blurred the edges so it wouldn't, so you don't see sharp lines. But I wanted to have all those squares light up, and you'll notice that the squares, and in fact, let me just solo that here. Solo that background and solo the image. And you can see it's not square, it's all angled, and that's done with the deform plugin that lets you squeeze things, and you can squeeze them and change the angle. In this case, it was done to make it seem like there was some depth to it, and like this is farther back than this. But that meant that every one of those lit up colors as the floor lights and goes around in circles and does different things, those all had to be shaped. And I needed one to fit into each of these. So I actually made a little pool of different parallelograms, all pre-shaped, and I would just drag them from the pool, drag them into position, set the color to whatever I felt was a good color for that. And so when I had these things going in a circle, and I had 2 of them, I would have one here, and then I would move, put one over here and one over here, and then next one would be here, and that would come over to there, and so forth. And that took me days. I spent days on that. Soloing is useful because, as I was saying before, when you try to play these things, it can't keep up. When you have 7 characters, all with chroma key and all lots of plugins, and you try to play it, it won't play in real time. But I can probably get this even in the high quality preview mode. And you can see they dance around, more or less in real time. But if I had all the players on there, Vegas just couldn't possibly keep up. There'd just be too much activity, too much computation. And a very clever feature is if you hit Control when you hit a solo, it just unsolos everything, and all the tracks come back. And now we're back to another thing that I think is interesting, and hopefully you think it's interesting too, is the Max Headroom Backgrounds I did. There's 2 of them. There's this one, which is fairly simple. And I actually created this from lines in an engineering program I use called Visio. So here you can see in the pan crop window, and I just created that, just a bunch of white lines on a transparent background so that I could then deposit this over any color background I want. So that's the basic pattern. There's also this version here that I used colorizing plugins to fatten it up. And the whole thing then rotates in a 3D using track motion. I think at this point you understand how the track motion works. This noise pattern here behind the California rock section is also that's noise. That's one of the plugins here, and they have a lot of presets here. All kinds of really cool things. A pattern that looks like wood. I used a lot of these in the Cello Rondo. I used pretty much everything that's in here at one point or another, especially towards the end of Cello Rondo. It's just one noise pattern after another. One thing that was really cool was turning blue shirts into red, because the intent was to have the slide whistle guys have blue shirts and the singers have red shirts. I forgot to change shirts. And that's really a very cool plugin. It's called the Secondary Color Corrector. And you can see here that this is a slide whistle guy, and I'll make this as big as I can in this window. Actually, I could make them even bigger here. And again, here's the use of those masks. Here you can see there's some black things happening behind there that I needed to block out. And so the original clip has red shirts, but in the video itself, I'm wearing a blue shirt. And that's done with the Secondary Color Corrector, and that is an extremely cool plugin. There is what they call the eyedropper that lets you sample the color that you want to change or do something to. And you can rotate the hue. So in this case, I picked red, and I wanted to rotate it through blue. And again, it's hard to show all of this at the same time in the preview window as I move this. But basically, I picked the color red. I picked the tolerance because some parts of the red shirt are darker than others. Here it's dark under here, and it's lighter up here. So I had any red that fell within that range of dark red through light red, but not so light that it affected my face in the skin tone here. So you pick the range, high red, the brightest part you want, the dimmest part, and then you change that and you rotate the colors, and that's what you get. There's also a lot of what's called transitions. In fact, rather than show you the transitions I did, I'll just show you here in their audition window. When you have two tracks, one overlaps another, whether it's on the same track or different tracks, you can control how they move. And there are a lot of them. This is the 3D blinds category. As you hover over with the mouse cursor, it shows you what it does. And there's a 3D cascade. I mean, there's many, many, many different ones. There's barn door. And they show you the A and the B clip. And there's just tons and tons of these. And of course, you can go in and you can edit these parameters. Here they have the yellow line, here they have black lines. But when you actually call up one of these presets, you can control everything. So those are really just showing all the presets they have. Here we have an iris pattern, and there's two irises happening at the same time. One is these guitar players on the left and right transition from one to another. This is the part where all three guys are wearing the white turtleneck shirts, and it goes into a different kind of a lead part. And then a couple of seconds later, there's a different iris transition, and that's this one here, where this background with the snow scene in the back, and there's a big transition there. So that's an iris that's on the background, is one background goes from another. If we call up the transition property, you can see besides all the presets that they have, circle out coming from the center, a diamond shape, rectangle, you can control every one of those, and you pick the basic shape. And whether it comes in or goes out, and feathering, which is a softening of the edges, so you don't have a hard edge, and that's around here. I just wanted it to be a little softer. If we say no feathering, you can see it's a very hard edge, and if we add more feathering than I have, even softer around there. So you control all of those things in the properties windows. One of the things that I really like is the dancing musical notes. Was actually done to hide those shadows behind the green screen. And this is just a solid color trimmed, cropped here, and placed right here. And the notes are actually a font I have called Anastasia font from the music publishing program I use called Encore. So you can go right in, you can grab an 8th note or 16th note or different notes. And I just animated them and had them, go up and down and march across the screen. I soloed just the notes, and I made them kind of a gold color, the blue background, and maybe this is enough that it can keep up. And that's just done with text fonts. And you can see all the animation here. They call this horizontal shear, and it's 0, and then there's minus 100. It stays at minus 100 to here, then it goes back to 0. Stays at 0 for a while, then switches suddenly to plus 100, and that's why they lean back and lean forward, and there's just a whole pile of them. Of course, once you do one block, you can highlight a bunch and then use Shift and then just Control drag, and you drag the whole pile, and you can stick them wherever. And here's what they're hiding. Now, this was actually before I learned about these masks. and this mask feature where you can do this. And I would have, although the problem is when you have something like this, and as I drag this, you can see the motion. The legs. If you're moving your legs a lot, you have to keep moving the mask. In this case, this character is not moving around too much. Though if I had a problem around here, I'd have to keep moving it. And believe me, there's plenty of that. Later on, after I learned about the masks from the Vegas Help Forum, a lot of expert help there, I put that there just to get rid of the kind of dark shadows under the feet. All this here is all nice and clean, but the original video, there's all kind of smudgy looking dark shadow stuff under the feet. The later video where I had better lighting didn't have so much of that, but it's really difficult. Usually when you see green screen stuff on music videos or on TV news or whatever, it's not a whole person standing on the floor. It's usually just the upper half of somebody's body. And that's a lot easier. The problem is getting even lighting. And even though I bought professional lighting, which doesn't mean I know how to use it, but even though I bought a lot of professional lighting, it was still hard to get rid of, you can see the shadows here. So there you have it. So this is a whole bunch of tracks and a whole lot of work to turn it into this. And I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I had fun doing it.